So it's my pleasure to introduce Craig Kivi. I haven't been in Michigan too long, but some of my first experiences with extension was when Craig was part of the Michigan Lake and Stream Leaders Institute. We had great conversations then and continue to have great conversations now. Craig is a resident of Portage Lake over in Washtenaw, Livingston County. He is a realtor by profession, but he's also a wonderful lake champion and lake advocate locally on his lake, but then lakes across the area. He is the president of a new nonprofit called Natural Shorelines Forever. He has been a CLMP volunteer for years and helps organize that for multiple lakes in that area. And he is starting a movement of protecting his shoreline with some innovative ideas. So Craig has been doing a lot with the data and moving forward to protect water bodies here in Michigan. So take it away, Craig.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks for that introduction. I'm excited to be here around so many great people and to be able to talk about some really great initiatives and some fun too. We're having some fun doing this as well. My topic is moving forward with innovation, with one riparian's effort to improve our lakes. And I do own property on Portage Lake. I do live on Portage Lake in a cottage on a 35-foot wide lot, and as well as have bought some natural shoreline, which we'll get into later. Next slide, please. Thank you. So as was mentioned before, 2017 graduate of Lake Leaders Institute. I cannot say enough about that program. It was just a wonderful experience, and one of the things that was said in that curriculum was, you're never going to be the same. You're never going to look at things the same. And that's, when I heard that, I thought, well, maybe not, but that's absolutely the case. I cannot look at things the way they are and not see how they could be. So I got spoiled there. My day job, principal broker, Golden Drake Realty, that'll become important as we talk further on. It's not important now. President Natural Shorelines Forever. I really can't believe that's true. Among other things that were done here, when I first thought of doing that, I was scared to death. There's no way I could do it. That's for other people to do. So I guess here we go. Let's do it. So the purpose of that organization is to be able to get funds and to be able to distribute funds and to create projects. Really the goal of the organization is to identify, as a realtor, I see natural shorelines, natural properties, wetlands, a lot of times before anybody else does. And then our goal is to notice these things and then bring in a scientific element to that. We use the Huron River Watershed Council, we respect a lot, to do their bioreserve assessments on property. And if they agree that it's worth going after, then wow, we're also real estate brokers, so we know how to do that. So we can purchase property, and then of course there's the restoration and protection of it as well. So a little bit about that organization, and that's its focus. Is just a baby. So we're still trying to figure out how to do this, but it will become a force in the area. Next slide, please. Thank you. So CLMP testing, what has it meant to me? And there's always a why to, why you do something. And a lot of it has to do with my family and of course the natural settings in the area, but I'll talk a bit about what it's meant to me and my family. I was also asked to talk about some realtor training I've done. Let's train some lakefront realtors, also referred to as herding cats. It was entertaining. It's a good thing to do, but not nearly as easy as everybody thinks it is. And then finally, a pet project, a wonderful project. It's actually taking up a lot of my time and encroaching on my day job, which I don't mind. And that's 2,700 feet of natural shoreline that we're doing an improvement project on. I'll talk about this more. I am the sole private owner of that property. It took me 2 years to buy it. 6 times the answer was absolutely no. Craig, you did a good job. You tried, but it didn't get done. You couldn't do it, but you tried. And 7 times we found some other way to get it done. And talk to somebody who knows more than me or come up with a new idea. But 2 years later, with the threat of development just hounding us, we got it done. And it's so I'm a private owner of it. However, the players that you'll see that are part of this project own it. I stand by. I've told them they can do anything they want. The answer to all their questions before they ask if they can do something is yes. And I'm just so excited to see what they're going to do with this, with 2,700 feet of natural shoreline, and arguably the busiest lake in southeastern Michigan, maybe even Michigan, Portage Lake. Next slide, please. Well, hi, little guy. So what testing is meant to me is this right here. This is my grandson, Caleb, and he is obviously, you know what he's doing. He's testing there and he was participating in that. And, you know, we talked about it, and he's involved at a very young age. And incidentally, where he is testing, his great grandfather rode a wooden rowboat over and fished. His great grandfather was Norman A. Wood, curator of birds, University of Michigan Natural Museum History, Museum of Natural History, curator of birds there in the early 1900s. So now this guy is testing and learning about conservation and learning about his environment as a sixth generation person of concern. So there's the why. His my other grandson, Christian, did the phosphorus testing with me. So was pretty excited to see the spider hold. That got him really excited. What is that? What's the spider hold? So, you know, we went through the whole protocol and you know, how careful we had to be to not contaminate things, to take samples, to leave head space in the bottle, put labels on, to freeze it. You know, he got to see all of that. So introducing these guys with real testing, you know, at the very beginning is a real foundational part of this. And myself, I was driving around these lakes in a 14-foot wooden rowboat with a 3-horsepower motor at about 8 years old, gone from 8 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night with no checking in. So the freedom was intense. It was incredible. Boats full of turtle nets and fishing rods and frog spears and everything else. So anyway, yeah, I see the note that Caleb should have taken his glasses off. He was participating, but he didn't actually take data. His grandfather did that for him. So anyway, next slide, please. So let's talk about training some realtors. Again, herding cats. We had 9 real estate offices that agreed to allow us to meet with them, and we had to bribe them. You can't just tell real estate agents, hey, we're going to learn about lake ecology and how to protect the lake. You know, they're bored to tears. What we had to do was give them something. So I know my industry pretty well, and so I knew what I had to give them. We had to provide them with a lot of other lake purchasing knowledge. What are riparian rights? What is total bottom ownership of the lake, lake bottom ownership? What is the gap between property line and water's edge? And so we had to give them a lot of knowledge along with to bribe them to show up so we could talk to them about lake ecology. We also had to give them a free brochure, give them all the credit for the brochure. So we left a big space on the back of the brochure. They could staple their card and say, see what I did. That's just the way it's got to work with these guys. So anyways, the good news is 9 real estate offices trained. I'll bet there was probably 30 or 40 people total. They got free brochures handed to them that day, 30 or 40 brochures each. So we're really hoping they found a home. It's something that we have to redo. They're not going to come back and ask for more brochures. We're going to have to just give them more brochures and tell them, hey, it's really important, and iterate that. The goal is that they would give these brochures to lake area buyers, regardless of whether they end up, it doesn't matter, just indiscriminately. If you know of somebody who's looking for property on a lake, give them one of these brochures and be knowledgeable enough to talk them through. And again, we told the realtors, you can really impress people with what you know if you learn this and talk it through with them. So we wanted to give it to lake area buyers. The other part of that was we wanted to make sure that these brochures were placed in all lake area listed homes. They always have this, always have their literature there. We want to make sure part of that literature was this brochure, which taught people how, just basically how to take care of their property and not affect the lake. Open houses, it should be something that we were hoping people would hand out at open houses as well. So we want to distribute as much as possible, target audience of buyers. We also have some people who rent on the lake who are interested in having these in their rental homes. So that was really a pretty good effort. Next slide, please. Here is a copy of the front page of the trifold, as you can see. In this case, we showed some pretty nasty pictures to get people's attention. And over on the far left side, this is the back of the brochure, if you will. How is what we're talking about affect you directly? You can't tell people, wow, there's too much phosphorus in the water and have them be impressed by that. They're not. What's it mean? It means to them that it affects weed and algae growth, affects their swimming, wading, boating, fishing, and more. And I make the case, half of your property value, because if the lake gets snotty, there goes half your property value, because half of the property value of any waterfront property is the lake itself. And so we wanted to start out with something very basic. And in the center, you can see where we've got just an evolution of more information. They can go to these websites and go as far as they want. But if we try to dump all this down to them right at the very beginning, it'd bore them to death. So anyways, let's go to the next page and I'll show you what's inside the brochure, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. Very simply, we wanted to make sure that it was just right, simple. And this was designed by a designer, and where I got the 5 best practices is here was I looked at 11 different conservation groups, including Michigan State, including River Watershed Council, including the Van Buren Conservation District, on and on and on and on. I said, what are these people all basically trying to say as their top 5? And yeah, there's some should be the 1, and one will be 3, and one will be 5. Doesn't matter. I was looking for what are the simple things that all of them were trying to say, and then to be able to state them in a way that was a diagram pictorially that people could just memorize at a glance. So obviously you guys know all these: dispose of car, house poisons properly, don't use fertilizers or herbicides, pick up pet waste, of course that's fertilizer, don't burn yard waste, which is fertilizer, or throw it in the lake, which people were doing. And then to create the buffer strip that we all talk about and very fond of, and make it beautiful. And I like this diagram of this picture that my designer made, because she's got an opening in front of the house. So, we're not trying to ram down the throat of people that it's got to be an absolute, 6-foot wide border, the entire length of it. And you got to walk through that stuff and worry about getting stung by bees. And I'll make a slot so you can walk in and out with your grandkids and pull kayaks and canoes in and out. So it's still recreational. If we get 80% of it, that's pretty darn good. So anyways, this is what we trained the realtors with. And they got it. I mean, they really kind of understood this. So what we wanted everybody to know for sure was the very bottom. Remember, rain washes everything into the lake. So that was our key. And we just needed to break it down on this level. So it seemed to be very effective. We still hand these brochures out to everybody we can. We've mailed them to subdivisions, and we've gotten some pretty good response. Incidentally, this brochure front and back was the graduate project required for the Michigan State Lakes Leader Institute. So, and I passed. So it was a good project. We're still using it, so that's important too. Next slide, please. Thank you. Next one is our Portage Lake National Shoreline project. Again, I'm the private owner of this property, but that is just a gateway for the scientists to do whatever they want on the property. So 2,700 feet of natural shoreline. You scientists do. Anyways, it's a floating mat of vegetation. And, you walk on it, you bounce up and down. It's about 2 feet thick, and under it's about 3 feet of water. So it's pretty incredible. My concern is that the shoreline is getting so badly interrupted or eroded that it's working its way back through the shore and threatening to get into this bog. And if it hits that floating carpet, it's going to tear off chunks 20 feet in diameter. It has no defense against it. In addition to this shoreline, we also own 120 acres of the lake bottom. That's a tax ID number for that, not just riparian rights. What's important about this is now the scientists get 11 acres of wetland behind it. They get the whole shoreline and they get the lake bottom to do as they please. I hope they look at it like a sandbox and they get to play and do whatever they want. My only requirement is that all the information that's learned, all the lessons learned are put in some sort of a database that shares to the public. So other universities, other associations and entities that are trying to prevent erosion on a very popular, busy lake have the same, have these lessons learned, because Portage Lake is not unique, as everybody knows. Next slide, please. Thank you. Well, there's another reason. That's my grandson, Christian. He is on the shoreline. He's on the natural shoreline. He's the little guy that did the phosphorus testing with me. And we hiked around the wetlands and along that shoreline. And his mom is a marine scientist. So he's just eating this up. So yeah, this is going to go from one generation to the next. It's gone 6 already. So how many in the future, I don't know, but it's going to continue to go. This little guy couldn't have been more curious the whole time that we've been on the shoreline and on the wetlands. So there's the why right there, is the future. Next slide, please. Yeah, it's going to be one of the largest inland lake shoreline projects in Michigan's history. That's a big one. I'm sure there's Great Lakes shorelines that are longer, but inland lakes, so far, some of the things I'm hearing is that it's going to be one of the biggest in history. That's exciting. Next slide, please. Thank you. Well, here it is. This is probably, for this project and for this presentation, is probably one of the most important slides I have. Obviously, the light green near the upper left, that's the shoreline. If I had a pointer, I'd point that to you. I don't know if my technical assistant can help me out here, but you can see it. It's the neon green squiggly lines that show the shoreline in the upper left corner. It shows the wetland behind it. So you can clearly get a view of what we're up against here. Yes, we're trying to get the property between the two green lines, but we got to bite off and chew what we can first. I own those 2 lines. Let's get that done first and not involve another property owner. Sometimes you just have to be that focused. So, what do you see about this lake here, though? The rest of it is 80% hard armored and developed. And so, this is the last stand here. And there was a 2009 DNR fisheries report that came out and did a survey. And they had said that, yeah, that this is critical. This is a critical area. And that 80% of this lake suffers from being hard armored, all woody structure removed, and other things as well. So this is a pretty darn good image of what's really going on and how important that property is and how important this project is going to be. Next slide, please. Yeah, last shoreline left. Other 80% of the lake shoreline is armored. And according to the fisheries study that was done in 2009 by the DNR, that area holds 89% of the lake woody structure, soon to be a lot more to make up for the areas that don't have any woody structure. This is the only place on the lake where you can see eagles, ospreys, and kingfishers. Sometimes the kingfishers can get on top of flagpoles and things like that. But what have we done? We've cut down all of the dead trees. We've cut down all the trees that even have dead branches. And eagles and ospreys, being smart predators, they want to be on the very end of a branch with no leaves because they want a chance to get away from something if it charges them. They don't like to land and leave trees. So consequently, they nest and raise their young in the Stinchfield Woods, University of Michigan property across the lake. They hunt the lake. They've only got one place to rest, and that's the natural shoreline that we have, our project, which has the standing dead trees along the shoreline that are getting eroded and are going to be one of the first things we're going to have to protect. So critical area, obviously. So next slide, please. Yeah, boy, did we get blindsided by these things. I mean, this caught all of us with our pants down. These things are, it's not just these things, but there's 50 of these on Portage Lake. And as we'll see, the introduction of these and the introduction of larger boats and more boats, exponential increase on Portage Lake has a corresponding exponential increase effect on the shoreline erosion. And I can show that pictorially by years. But we all, you know, this thing designed, the whole back end morphs just like a transformer. It's designed to throw a giant wave, high peak energy, high peak to peak energy. I was an electronic technician. I know sinusoidal analysis, and I can tell you these waves are designed with a very sharp, high energy peak, long peak to peak energy. Nature has never seen anything like this before and is woefully unprepared for this wave to hit the shoreline. I can hear the difference between wind waves, which are sinusoidal and very soft, when they hit the shoreline and when these things hit the shoreline. It's a completely different energy. Nature is unprepared, and the shoreline's unprepared. Shoreline plants are unprepared for it, and we're all unprepared for it. You know, so when these things first started, we could see this happening. And so what do? Well, did some research and found out that people were trying to regulate them and trying to get them to go up and down the center of the lake and trying to, restrict the hours. And I saw that crash and burns what I saw at a township meeting. There was no way that was going to make any traction, because at that township meeting, that lobby sent attorneys and sent people from far and wide to shout down anybody's concern, because these boats sell for $230,000 a piece, some of them. That means somebody can make $130,000 on a sale. They're going to sell these instead of a $50,000 boat where they only make $25,000. It's an incredible force. So jiu-jitsu move, sidestep. What do? We can soft armor the shorelines and at least try to put our energy in something that's going to make a difference. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this is a tree that didn't die on its own, and it didn't die from wind waves. This tree fell over because it had all of the soil eaten out from under the roots by the drastic increase in number of boats and size of boats. I just want to blame not only wake boats. We have pontoon boats now that have 400 horsepower engines on them and go 80 miles an hour. And we had 25 horse when I was a kid. What happened? We're all just caught off guard. But this is the kind of thing. This tree did not die of natural causes. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is a 5x6 chunk of my natural shoreline that got torn away this year. And I've seen a dozen of these over the last couple of years. So what's happening is the waves are hitting and eating out all the soil under these, and the shorelines is actually hinging up and continues to act as a hinge up and down till it finally breaks off and gets a wind blowing offshore and blows them out in the middle of the lake. It's terrifying. And, Craig's Chicken Little here, and he's making a big deal out of nothing. This is just a small little chunk. Well, let's go to the next slide. How about that one? That one's as big as a pontoon boat. That was torn off the shore on Strawberry Lake. Strawberry Lake has the same exponential increase on Portage Chain Lakes, same exponential increase of boats and size of boats. And now we're starting to get chunks of shoreline torn off and floating out in the middle, the size of pontoon boats. So I don't know what it's going to take to get people's attention, but I don't know what the regulation answer is, but I do know that perhaps soft armoring, natural armoring of shorelines is, our real move. It's just a thought. It's just it's something I know I can do as opposed to fighting a voting lobby. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, so follow me closely on this one, please. We're going to start with the upper left corner we're going to go to the right, then the lower left corner and go to the right again. Okay, so please stay with me. Let's look at the upper left corner, 1985. The most important way to measure this is look at the little round bay. I don't know how that happened, but it's a cute bay. We called it Dollar Bay. So 1985, and before that, when I was a kid, the opening in that bay was 5 feet wide. So you took a boat, went up to it, pulled the motor up, and you had to paddle in and fish. And it was an awesome little cool place. Okay. 15 years later, the opening to the mouth of that is about 30, 40 feet wide. Okay. That's to the right. Let's go down to the left. 10 years from that point, the opening now is another, 30 feet wide? Let's go to the right from that one. 5 years later, the opening now, the opening is 100 feet, maybe 150 feet. And now if I had a picture of contemporary, there's almost no bay shape to that opening anymore. It's just a wide U-shaped, expanded U-shaped opening. So what's alarming here is, okay, you mathematicians and you statisticians, look closely. 1985, 15 years later, it's open quite a bit. Only 10 years later, it's open more. Only 5 years later, it's opened even more. Now, I'm not a mathematician, but I think that's exponential. Somebody else can correct me, but I think that is happening faster and faster. So that's why it's alarming to me, and another impetus for this shoreline restoration project. Next slide, please. Thank you. Well, now there's a pair. There's a couple of guys there. On the left is Eric Elgin from MSU, who we all know and love, and on the right is Eric Calabro from Eagle. And these two guys came out here on a very cold day when the water was down. It was a perfect situation. The water's usually all the way up to that sign. Perfect situation for them to see the littoral zone contour and to plan what is the right treatment and what are the right ways to do this, to start to create their permit to put the logs and treetops and stumps along the shoreline. So it was a great day. I spent about 8 hours out there. They froze. It was cold that day, but that's all part of it. So it was very exciting to be there with these guys and listen to them. A great privilege. Next slide, please. Thank you. And this is how detailed they got. I mean, they're measuring how far the logs should go up on the shore, how big they have to be, all the ingredients that they needed to formulate the permit, all the while thinking about the benefits that they were looking for. So it was just intriguing to be there, just another version of what they were doing that day. Next slide, please. And then this group came out later this September. Again, Eric Elgin on the left, Eric Calabro, the other blue suit, and then Joe Noner and Kizari. Her last name begins with a T, and I'm not going to wreck it because I think it's beautiful, so I'm not going to try to pronounce it. Joe, obviously, and Kizari are DNR people who, as a team, came out with Eric and Eric. I have to say Eric MSU and Eric Eagle when I'm talking to him. It's fun. So anyways, what a group. I was just in awe watching these guys work. I learned so much this day. Let me try to stumble through a few things that I think they were doing that day. Next slide, please. So Joe and Kizari these are baseline. They're trying to establish baseline criteria for a number of things that are going to be important to them to measure this project's progress. They're right now getting a baseline measurement of sedimentation. They've got a laser device on shore, and so they're actually measuring the contour of the bottom as is now as a baseline. And then what they did was put transect lines up. Those are lines that come from the shoreline there's two stakes in the shoreline. They line those two up with a rope and project it out 75 feet into the water. They left the stakes on shore so they come back and stretch that transect line down exactly the same spot and do this exact same thing again so that they can measure any difference. Funny story, Joe Noner says, hey, Craig, is it okay if I put a couple of stakes up we put stakes up in the property? I said, Joe, you didn't get the memo. You guys, the answer to any of your questions about what you want to do on this property is yes before you ask it. And I heard this voice in the background go, I told them. So it was a fun day. So that's what they were doing. Next slide, please. Love this. So there's another transect line, same purpose. Not going to explain that again. And so they can repeat this again. So the square is, from what I understand, the square is a sample of the life in that square. And Eric is holding the square. Eric Elgin is holding the square. Calabro is taking data with his phone. That square was put up against the shoreline to start, right smack on the shoreline. And so Eric went underwater and came back up and said, Starry Stonework 20%, Eurasian milfoil 10%, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Then flip the square toward us, out deeper, and measured the life in that square, and did it again, replicated that all the way out the whole 75 feet, and took, I guess, a biological inventory, the best that I could say it, I'm not a scientist, of that entire area there to be able to get a baseline measurement of what the life is, inventory of what the life is now. And then I think they're going to do the same thing again after the project is started and the project is in place to measure what's happening. So very interesting, terrific time. Next slide, please. So here's a visual overhead of kind of what we're going to be doing. We're going to be dropping in apparatus called fish sticks, L trees, some different ways of fastening them to the shore, and also some root wads. These are the giant root balls. When somebody cuts a tree down leaves about 4 feet and grabs hold of it with a excavator and pulls it out of the ground, all those cool little roots and little nooks and crannies and things, we're going to drop those on the shoreline too. Two purposes, again. One is to prevent erosion, see if we can get some silting, see if we can get some native plants to regenerate and plant some if we have to. But the second thing, we're so happy the DNR jumped in and wants to be part of this with habitat restoration and the enhancement of habitat, fish habitat and minnow habitat and crayfish habitat and so forth. So this is kind of an overview of the kind of thing we're going to be doing, where it's going to go along the shoreline. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's a log placement example where we're going to be putting logs on the shoreline on an angle with the hope of creating some sort of eddies behind these logs for silt to deposit and to break down some wave energy. So, these aren't toys. These aren't Lincoln logs. These things are going to be like 5,000 pounds a piece. An 18-inch diameter, 20 or 30 foot log is not something you can just put on a barge and put out there and drop in the water. We've got some real logistical challenges ahead of us. Some of this bottom is hard sand and gravel. Some of it's muck, and I just don't know how you in a foot deep of muck. So the boat bottoms out. You can't move stuff. We've got some logistic problems. We're gonna do it though. So, anyways, here's an example of how the logs would be placed. This is actually a page from a draft of the permit, the Eagle permit. One example of how logs will be placed. Next slide, please. Root wads. So there's a pictorial of what we're going to try to do. Put them on the shore with the stump facing the shore, the root wad out to break up energy and all kinds of cool sediment depositing around behind those roots and all kinds of little crayfish and minnows and stuff stuck up in there. And this is going to be another challenge too. That's 3,000 pounds. Before I leave this point, I want to shout out to Portage Yacht Club here on Portage Lake. Unbelievable. They've got 100 of these root wads for us for free. They've got a big chunk of forest that's already going to be logged off. It's already going to be cut. So they have provided us with these root wads, which are huge, with giant logs and with treetops. Already, we have all the materials we need to do whatever we want to do. They also have a big landing zone behind there that we can stage this stuff. It's just across the street, easy access to Portage Lake. Portage Yacht Club just contributed about $30,000 to this effort. If we were to have to go get these materials separately and truck them in and figure out, it's just an incredible thing. So hats off to Portage Yacht Club. If you get a chance to say something nice to them, please do, because that is, that's conservation in action. They said yes to everything. What can we do to help? And provided resources like that too. So I wanted to plug that, make sure everyone knew that. Next slide, please. Fish sticks. This is the DNR's favorite. Not only do these, it's protruding out into the water from the shoreline. I think you can make that connection, and then anchored back against the tree in this case. But these are 3 trees, 3 to 5 trees that if you put your hand out in front of you and did the number 3, that's kind of the configuration as to what they're going to be. They'll break up wave energy and provide all kinds of great places for minnows, crayfish, snails. Birds like to land in these, and insects, and I'm not touching it because that's for biologists to do. But I'm excited that these kind of things are going to go on there. Fish sticks are one of my favorite, and I'll show you why in a minute here. Next slide. Oh, I'll show you why now. As an experiment on my own 35-foot shoreline, that's a 12 by 12 fish stick configuration. And I put that in early March, and it wasn't 3 to 4 weeks later than I saw every morning smallmouth and largemouth bass hunting that. It was an incredible feeling. Just incredible. Look down there one day and see these torpedo boats lined up on the outside of this thing and shooting through there with big waves and stuff and coming back out. And then getting close to it, seeing the school of minnows that were hiding in there and the small bluegills and so forth. And if you're really sharp, look in the upper left corner of the treetops, you're going to see where a fish rose the same time I took that picture. Just happened. But when I was trying to take a picture of it, it didn't show up. There's 3 smallmouth that were lined up on that thing, ready to go in there. And I tried to get the picture, but my camera wasn't good enough. Maybe somebody who's really good at fishing can find them in there, but they didn't show up. So this was a really fun experiment for me to run on my own shoreline. The neighbors said, "Ooh, what are you doing? Get that stuff out of there." But then at the end, they loved it. So it's kind of interesting how that turned out. Look at the bottom of this too, where it attaches to shore. We're also running a concurrent experiment using 1-inch diameter bamboo stakes to anchor these to the shoreline with the thought of bamboo as an inert product, dry, and doesn't introduce anything to the environment, and will fasten that to the shoreline. And that got beat up from March all the way until still now, November, and it's holding really well. So we're really happy with that part of the experiment as well. Next slide, please. Goals. The goals of this shoreline restoration are stabilization at this point, restoration, the silting, the fill back in of silting, and maybe some native plants that will grow back, and maybe we'll have to plant some. Erosion prevention from then on, habitat improvement, and the increase of habitat, the increase of life, as was the example in the fish sticks. I saw with my own eyes. I can't unsee it. But the only requirement as I said before, that I have for everybody working on this, and it's their project, not mine. It's these big hitters. I don't know what they know. Take it away. I'm hoping they just take it away. Is we've got to come up with some sort of sharing data format for anybody else who can get in there without passwords, without any kind of restriction, and be able to multiply the benefit of this project. This project is going to be additive to Portage Lake, increasing the health of Portage Lake, but we would like this to be multiplicative. It's not just a Michigan problem. It's not just a Midwest problem. It's a United States problem, and maybe even international problem of competition, between recreation and the natural world. The same old story. Anyways, next slide, please. coalition members, I call it a coalition, project owners, people who own this project, Michigan State, Eagle, DNR, Michigan National Shoreline Partnership. Natural Shorelines Forever is it sort of in the background, just trying to help wherever we can. And I have got a group of people in this community or in Pinckney, excavators, well drillers, dock and hoist installers, people who know how to handle big loads and are volunteering, or we'll pay them what they want to help with this project when it happens. We have people who are donating to us without even being asked. I had a well driller come into my office and give me 5 $100 bills and say, I don't want a receipt. I believe in what you're doing. Those kind of things just have so much energy behind them. Unexpected things are happening. And this has just got enough inertia that I don't see how this project's not going to happen. And then anybody who wants to join, anybody who wants to support, anybody who has advice, wide open. We're just really excited about this happening. Do I have another slide? Then I get to shut up.
Not quite yet. We have a couple minutes for questions.
Okay.
Thank you, Craig, for that information. We do have a decent amount of questions here. There's a few where people really loved your brochure and asked, is it possible to either get copies or an electronic copy? And if so, how?
Yes, you can get an electronic copy. I can send it. It's a PDF, simple PDF. By the way, it was done with the support of Portage Base Lake Association, and partially funded by them. So, but we talked about this ahead of time already. If somebody wanted it, it was not copyrighted. It was not protected any way we want this to get out. So yes, just send me an email. I'll send you a PDF. I'll also attach with that the designer, and the designer has already agreed that she will modify the design and add words, whatever you want to do for your own customization. So yes, send me an email.
Wow, excellent. And for your email, do our participants have access to it? Were you on that list of CLMP?
Interestingly, Craig was not on the list of CLMP volunteers, and I don't know why. But yes, I'm doing Little Portage, and I should be on there. So we'll get the emails. I'll get the email to you, and you can get it to people somehow.
Sounds good. So yeah, that's fine with me.
Yeah.
Perfect. There's a question just about the realtors who were able to come and learn from your project. So Home Waters Real Estate is a major seller of waterfront properties in northern Michigan. Did any of agents from that far out participate in your training?
Well, in fairness to them, no, because we didn't ask them. I had to keep it local because it's just me in a truck, and so I had to keep it Pinckney, Dexter area. That's just the best shot I had. So no, because they haven't been asked, but it sounds like they would jump on it if they had a chance to. So it's open to everybody.
Okay, so this is kind of a side question, but I think it's just because it's looking at how proactive you've been. Any experience in getting a county to pass a requirement to conduct point of sale septic system inspections?
Well, Washtenaw County already has them.
Yeah, now I think this is somebody who is out of Oceana, but think of any county in this state, how.
Yeah, I don't know the process for that, but Washtenaw County would be the people to call and see how they're doing it. Yeah, I don't know the process to get that done.
Okay. So Craig, I love your fish stick story about how the neighbors hated it at first, but now they love it.
That's true.
Any tips for how to talk about projects like this so neighbors get excited about them?
Oh, what a great question. And first of all, don't talk down to them, and don't act like they're doing something wrong. The conversation I've had is like, well, okay, this is the reason why I do this, and here's what I've seen. What do you think? And they look at, they say, well, I don't want to do that. My whole lawn, I can't see the shore. And I'll say something like, well, how about 5 feet? Will you do 5 feet? Oh, well, God, I can do 5 feet. I can put 5 feet in natural vegetation and no problem at all. So they do that. Then they start seeing the hummingbirds, the frogs, and the turtles, and they get excited on their own. And they want to recreate on the property. They don't want it completely sealed off. And so it's a matter of, I guess it's a matter of respect, taking them where they're at, talking to them where they're at, and then slowly introducing this and showing them how it looks. Really, I got some flowers in my national shoreline. I think you saw that I never saw before. I mean, I never seen in my life before. And you just find people will grow to it if they do a little bit at a time.
Well, thank you very much, Craig. Some people have also said thank you for this presentation. Great job. We are now at 2:32, so we've entered our break period now between breakout sessions. So again, thank you. If we all were in person, we'd be giving you a nice round of applause.